Welcome back to the update. We got Saul Klein, John Reilly, and myself, Tristan. Thanks for joining us, everybody. A lot of stuff happening again. Well,
Yeah.
the last time we talked was 2 weeks ago, right, guys?
Yeah.
Yep.
Since then, Real is acquiring Remax too, which is crazy. I totally forgot to bring that up.
It's
Yeah,
called,
what's
what's it
up?
called? Real Max.
Real Max. I mean, the opposite would be Max Real, right? Or Real. It could have worked too. Um, anyway, everyone, thanks for jumping in. There's a lot to cover today. In fact, Saul and John made this great graphic for us that we can follow along with once we get there. But guys, where do you want to start with this? Because I feel like I'm losing track now, and I have these these podcasts with you just so I can stay afloat.
Well, so it forces John and I to research and be up to date. So we got something new to talk about, right?
It's so funny. I serve it for the same reason. So, all right, where do you guys want to start?
Well, so I think you hit the nail on the head. There's so many things going on, and things are happening so quickly, it's easy to lose track. And it's easy to be tactical. Matter of fact, for most people, it's all they can be. It's like, don't bother me with what's today, Tuesday? Don't bother me
Yeah.
with Wednesday. I used to say this to John Riley. It's not Friday yet. Right? Don't
That's
talk to
funny,
on Thursday. Don't talk to me about Friday stuff on Thursday. I'm not
dude.
ready for it. And
I'm
so
just
all
not
of
ready.
these, yeah, well, all these things happening made me, and John and I had this conversation. Let's create a graphic that begins to
Let me
explain,
pull that one up.
lay out for people these different things that we think could have an impact on their practice.
Okay, let
Somehow,
me. Can you guys see the graphic?
Yep.
I can see it.
Perfect. And then you tell me where you want to zoom into, but this is the
Well,
idea behind it. Can you guys explain the reasoning here?
And
yeah. So
and and, and by the way, let me just first explain that when I saw this thing, I couldn't get to sleep at night. There's just so much stuff going on. I couldn't go to sleep. And then I wake up this morning and there's another announcement. But in any event, we tried to lay it out. Go ahead, Saul.
in this one, and in my mind, the center of all of this multi-billions of dollars of revenue, the center, the hub is the MLS.
Hmm.
Because all of these entities that we can talk about, the mergers, the consolidations, they all revolve around the data.
Yep.
And so the role of the MLS, and this is what motivated me here, is that the role of the MLS in the business model of course, brokers like Compass
Yep.
and portals, which are also brokers, but portals like Zillow. And who are the players? What are their objectives? What are the side categories? And so that was the idea. There's too many. Let's put it into a graphic where we can begin to look at things, right? So if you look down the left, and when I first did this, I didn't have a starting point. And Jose Emerson, who's my COO, he said, you got to have a starting point, right? You got to, where
Yeah.
do you go first? So down the left is kind of a starting point where the data flows. And then in the center in green is the MLS and what the MLS does to protect, to control, and monetize the data. And then what we've
Okay.
seen are these two sides, kind of, which the graphic calls Team Compass and Team Zillow,
Mm.
who've got their own issues with each other and have different
Hmm.
approaches where one side wants to control the consumer eyeballs and the other side wants to control the data and the timing of the data as it hits the marketplace. And so they've got these two kind of teams with different philosophies. And of course, they get their data from the MLS, and we hope that they continue to. And then you've got the acquisitions or the teaming up that has taken place, right? The
Hmm.
big one on the Compass side is Compass and Redfin and and Redfin teaming up with Rocket and Rocket with Mr. Cooper. So you got all those acquisitions. Now, what we don't have is a graphic here to say what benefits do these entities get out of this coming together,
Yeah.
right? And so then so you got down across the bottom, you got Zillow and Compass and um, Redfin and homes.com and or realtor.com and homes.com. And then there's this Google approach with House Canary and AI. What's that going to do? And then you got all the brokers and agents that have IDX and VOW sites. So all
Yep.
of this comes from the MLS. All this data drives this distribution and this visibility of what's for sale.
Mm.
Right? Now, to the far right, there's other things like litigation that's been affecting the market and that we've been talking
That's a whole
about.
different
That's a
thumbnail,
whole,
man.
yep, but it could affect, you're right, it could affect the way these entities operate. And so
Yeah.
one of the things I want to go back, I put arrows in, but there were so many arrows, it got really confusing. So I took all the arrows out.
That's
And
funny.
except for you can see the data goes underneath the MLS, you can see the data, the arrows. So but I'm going to put arrows back in and then industry players across their partners across the bottom. So the intention, and maybe I didn't accomplish it, but the intention was to simplify for people all of these things that are taking place.
Can you explain one thing here for me? So towards the top here, hold on, right there. Listing control, who decides when lead control, policy control. Take me through this, please.
Yeah, so different part of the thought these days is MLSs should be more flexible and that
Mm-hmm.
rules need to change so that consumers can have more choice about when their listings are exposed to the pub, when it goes in the MLS, when it gets exposed to the public, what gets exposed to the public, uh, who gets to decide that. And so that's one group of people that believe, and companies that believe that maybe brokers should control the listings and what happens to the listings. And then leads, of course, the the websites that get a lot of eyeballs, they one of the things they do with those eyeballs is they sell them as leads. So you've got, well,
Mm.
who gets to control the leads? And that's another piece of this overall ecosystem. And then,
That's
but
true.
somebody's got to create the rules, and the rules have to be flexible enough to allow for brokers and agents to compete. So the MLS really has to do its best to be neutral and to control the and write the policies and enforce so that that data coming from the MLS remains of value to the players, to the people who want to control the listing. So we're looking at, and I thought about listing control. When do they go in? Who sees what? We see an addition to MLSs. You've heard the conversation around private listing networks within
Hmm.
the MLS itself, right? To help because as an MLS, we want all the data and all the data is valuable. But if people don't put the data in the MLS, then of course, it's not the data set in the MLS is incomplete. It's not going to be as
Hmm.
valuable to agents doing CMAs or so. Is there a way that we can get some of that stuff that's maybe not, people want to keep it private, knowing that there are
Yep.
legitimate reasons to have privacy and
Hmm.
but can we capture that data? Can we capture that information? So you see different MLSs across the country have private listing networks. You probably saw MRED, which is in the Chicago area, did a deal or did a partnership of some sort with Compass, where Compass is going to provide to them their private listings. That's kind of a big deal, right? And of great interest. And then of course Zillow's got their own, Zillow's got this thing called preview listings,
Yep,
Zillow
they
Preview,
do.
and that's kind of a private network. You get a listing if you put it in Zillow before you put it in the MLS, and of course, you still Zillow advocates that you follow your MLS rules. But if, let's say you take a listing on Friday, the listing doesn't have to be in the MLS till Monday, but you can go right to Zillow and you can input that listing. They've got an interface that allows you to do that, and they get a 2-day jump start. And Zillow does on having data that's not available anywhere else. It's not available in an IDX feed. It's not available in a VOW feed. Zillow benefits, and Zillow must believe they benefit so much that if you sign up, if you do it this way, and by the way, if you then put it in the MLS on Monday and you put it in coming soon, Zillow will use the MLS data instead of the data you entered in by hand. And then Zillow will pay you like 10% of the gross income, gross commission. On top of your commission, you can earn 10%. And if you're one of these companies that partners with Zillow, I don't know what the number is, but you earn more than 10%. So it's so all these things are going on to get what? To get the data before anybody else does.
That makes sense
What's
because
the
if you could
reasoning
use the
behind
data,
that?
yeah,
Get leads, SEO, right? There are a lot of reasons that entities would like this. So um,
question
it,
about the graphic. Yes, it'll go on to the Data Advocate website. I'm pretty sure John
yeah,
Reilly
I
will put
think
it in
is
there.
if it's not there yet, it will be.
Is it up there?
Yeah, and we'll have to explain a number of things in there. One thing that stood out to me was along with a list of portals and things, they had one section for House Canary. And I really
Oh
didn't
yeah.
know too much about House Canary until I did some research on it because I was saying, well, where do they get their data from? Are they getting it from MLS? And if so, what are the restrictions, on that? And I found out that House Canary is not does not have authority to actually set up an MLS or to display the listings. But what they do is they ingest, they acquire data from many sources, and then they put it into their formula in order to output a product such as trends, pricing trends, and that type of information is extremely helpful to everybody. And so House Canary does play a pretty big role with a lot of these MLSs, but under very tight restrictions as to the use of it. But they use it for forecasting trends, for example.
Well, and another thing is that they have a website called Come Home, and Come Home is a brokerage. And so Come Home has access to IDX feeds.
Mm.
And then if you think about in potential possible partnership with Google and using AI. So when someone goes to Google, and maybe many people don't go there anymore, but if people go to Google, think about all of the ads that you could sell around the sale of real estate and the Home Depot and the Lowe's and the value around moving. So what if someone went to Google and they did some kind of search, show me all of the properties in San Diego in a particular zip code, 3 bedroom, 2 bath. I need a mother-in-law flat, whatever, right? In plain language search. And then what if Google would then go to a site where all the listings are and surface those listings for the person searching on Google? And so think about, well, maybe nobody heard of this particular website, but if traffic was being driven from Google to that website, how long do you think it would take for people to know about that particular site? So there are different approaches to using the data to attract eyeballs. And I go back to the best, cleanest data is the data in the MLS. And so people talk about they're going to replace the MLS. Well, maybe people talk about it, but all of these billion-dollar companies, of all of them, I don't know any that go out and get their own data.
Yeah.
They all get it from the MLS. You can tell me how worthless
All of it.
the MLS is worthless. Well, yeah, all these billion-dollar companies, that's where they get the data from the MLS. So one of the things we need to do as MLSs, as brokers, as realtors, is we need to figure out how to help our MLSs monetize that data to the benefit of the subscribers.
That's it. That's the key.
And that's what we're looking at doing.
We'll figure it out. I think. I think we'll figure it
Yeah,
out.
no,
If
I think we'll
not,
figure it
listen,
out.
if not, I'm sure the MLSs will be squeezed out, but I think they'll figure it out.
But that takes time because for any of these
Yeah.
entities to go out and get all that data themselves, that's expensive. You have to have a
Yeah, it
sales
is.
team go out and convince all the brokers and right.
Yeah, and it's not easy getting all the brokers working with each other, but I do see consolidation happening more and more with MLSs because one of you mentioned in our last talk that we had over 700 MLSs at one point. Was that right or
Well, we
no?
at one point I think we had over like 1,200, but we're
Yeah.
Okay,
down to about 500.
okay,
Oh, I
500.
think, yeah, and I think it's going down from that, uh, and it's going to be going down more.
Well, for me, so remember, I'm not in the MLS world, and I don't understand it like both of you. But as an agent and a broker owner type thing, I think it just benefits me if they all work closer together without having to nickel and dime me for belonging to another adjacent MLS. They've done a better job over the years doing that, but I figure if I'm working with less MLSs to have my listing go out everywhere, the better. It's almost like one big MLS, even though I don't know that's ever going to happen. But I feel like we're heading in the right direction.
Well,
Am
so
I understanding that right or no?
consolidation makes sense to me to a point, and you can accomplish the same thing through data shares. And so you don't need to have everything. See, because here's the issue to me. There's too much nuance in real estate. And all real estate is local. And we have a
Mhm.
hard time getting people in one market to agree on what we should name a field.
Dude, I know.
Imagine if we had one place, it was all controlled nationally. Who would get to make
Mhm.
those decisions?
You and John, I trust you guys.
Yeah. So the idea of a national MLS to me is just based on my experience in the industry is like that's a pipe dream. And I'm not sure it
I
benefits, but
agree.
if you could get interoperability, if you can get data sharing, so you join one MLS and it data shares with the other, and that's easier said than done. And like here in San Diego, we have data
Oh
shares with
man.
5 or 6 different MLSs, and so you join one, you can see the others, and that benefits the brokers that don't have to join multiple MLSs. But to try to bring them all together, decide who's going to sit on the board of directors, what kind of governance you're going to have, um, that's hard to get people to agree, really.
That's true. Stephanie brings up a good question. You guys tell me. We pay for the MLS to exist and then pay for the leads from our own database. Are these companies buying the MLS data? She's referring to
No.
that graphic.
So most of these companies that sell leads get the data from the MLS because they have a broker's license. And because they have a broker's license, they're entitled to an IDX feed or a VOW, virtual office website. The big portals typically take both feeds. IDX is advertising, VOW is like it's like everything in the MLS except private remarks, probably. And that can be made available to the public. And do they pay for it? Yes, but not a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
They pay the same thing as mom and pop pay to get those listings from the MLS, right? So if you pay the MLS a couple $100 a month, then so does everybody else. And so I see Stephanie's question, their fees should be higher. I don't disagree with that at all. The question is, how do you value the difference? And we've tried it here to say, hey, look, if you get a lot of website traffic, then that data is worth a lot more to you than it is
Yeah.
to somebody who doesn't get any traffic on their website. And the response we got was, if you charge that way, that's a success tax. And
Mm.
we're a broker. You can't, well, yeah, you're a broker, but you don't put any listings in the MLS. You just got a broker's license so you could be eligible to get the feed. And because you get the feed, you now display it and you spend a lot of money and you get all these eyeballs and you sell the leads.
Yeah,
So
I would be like, listen, if you charge for lead gen or you're referring it out and making money off of that, then maybe there's an extra fee. I don't know.
so I believe we've been looking at this for a long time that because we're now we distribute our data via API, and
Hmm.
it's all Amazon Web Services. And so the people who receive the data from us can hit the servers, whatever, can hit the cloud as often as they want. And so there's an advantage in getting the data before anybody else does. As a matter of fact, as a broker, you put your data in the MLS, it goes up, it's going to be distributed to brokers. If another broker gets it on their site before you do, you actually get penalized on your site from an SEO perspective.
That's
And so,
crazy.
so these companies, these big companies that have the capability of hitting a server frequently. Now, what do I mean by frequently? 5 times a day, 10 times a day, 10,000 times a second?
There you
Well, you've
go.
got an advantage if you can do that. And so maybe a way to charge is by the connections. How often do you connect to our server? Another might be how many files do you download? Do you replicate all the data all the time? Another
That's a good
might be
point.
the images.
I have a question on that. Don't you guys get charged also per hit back and forth on the API? Right? That's
Yeah.
how it works.
So and we can charge, but that's like then how much profit do you put on top of that, right? And is there a
I
different way to
mean,
charge? And so we're
yeah,
constant,
that's a tough one.
right? We're constantly looking at that and trying. But the first step was to get them into the cloud, and then to build the capability to transport via API to anybody who wants it. And then we created a pricing model. But our pricing model is consistent. It doesn't matter whether you're a giant portal broker or a small broker. It's a nominal amount of
Hmm.
money. Well, it should be part of our MLS fee. No, the MLS fee has to pay for everything else. Not everybody has a website, so we don't just want to say it's part of the MLS fee. So we do charge for access to that. And a lot of these vendors, you know a lot of them, Tristan, they're companies that build websites for agents. They have a whole business model. So we charge them uh, per URL, right? Per website address. And again, it's a nominal amount of money that they pay. And then that
Hmm.
money flows back into the MLS. And the MLS is uh, we don't get I don't get to keep the money the MLS makes, right? It all goes into the operation of the MLS and right
Yeah.
the benefits that we try to bring to people. And my thoughts of this for a long time have been if we can generate enough revenue through the distribution of the data to major players, then we should be able to start to bring down the subscription fee because if you think about the internet and content, and we talked about this the last time, that on the internet, content providers get paid for their content. But if
Yeah.
you're a realtor, you have to pay to get your content on the
Mm.
internet. What if we could figure out a way to make those other entities pay and that covered, and now we could pay the the subscribers and participants of the MLS for the data. And now instead of only putting in the required 20 fields, what if we pay you extra to put in all 100 fields? And so there's lots that you can start to do if, in fact, you can monetize the data at some higher level. Um, but what happens is entities steal the data. They call it the gray market, and because it's
Hmm.
easy to steal the data, and then they package it
Yes.
up and they sell it. And if there are a lot of different places you can go out there and buy MLS data, those entities didn't pay the MLS. They acquired that on the gray market, and then they package it up and they sell it for lots of money. So how do we capture gray market revenues? And so I know that whatever MLS you might be a member of, the people that run your MLS, they're conscious of this and they're looking at this and trying to figure this out. And in the meantime, all this stuff's going on, right?
Yeah.
And
That's
I saw
very true,
somebody,
man.
yeah,
Well,
somebody,
I mean, Saul, is there some type of a billing system that can be constructed based on the consumption of the data? You
well,
know,
yeah, we've actually working with a company called Realtina. We've actually constructed a way to distribute the data. It's all automatic. We're looking at ways to track and charge above just a per URL charge. And what we've done is we've been able to reduce the efforts in the data distribution to where instead of taking 3 people, it takes only one person. And so we're able to
Much
experience
better.
economies of, efficiencies based on the technology.
Interesting. All right. Saul, John, this was awesome. Can you do me a favor? Upload that to the Data Advocate and I'll blast it out too. I love that graphic. And I'm pretty sure you're going to add to it as things happen.
Well,
And
we
then,
got an addition today with Realtor.com doing a deal with Zillow Preview.
oh, yeah, that was
And
interesting.
so now I got to add another box for Realtor.com and an arrow for Zillow
Yeah,
Preview over to Realtor.com.
interesting. Listen, John, I'm going to send you something after, well, probably like later on today. And then you guys play around with it and then let's talk because outside of what we just talked about, I think we might have something on the other end. Okay. So play
I
around
like
with
the
it.
idea we talked about before we went on because I
Yeah.
think they're actually the hard part is going to be able to convince people what it is.
We just need one big MLS and that to
Yeah.
show, right?
Yep.
CRMLS, right? So,
No
all right, everybody.
SDMLS.
Thank you for jumping on. I appreciate your back and forth on this. That was a really cool graphic. John, let us know when that one's up. I'll blast it out as well in Lab Code Agents. Uh, and thank you so much for always bringing the knowledge, guys. You always help me understand things that are happening clearer. So thank you.
Yeah, great to see you again.
Good to
Thanks,
see you,
everybody. Have an
Tristan.
awesome
Bye
day.
bye.